नमस्कार शर्मा जी।
सब हेलो, नमस्ते सबको, नमस्ते।
नमस्ते।
जब शुरू करना हो तो बता दीजिएगा। कौन सी? क्या बोला?
सर शुरू करें? It's 4.
Just one moment. Okay.
Okay, so give me a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So good afternoon, one and all. Am I audible to everybody?
Yeah, Uma.
Yeah. Hi, Alok. Yeah. So all of us are celebrating the Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav celebrations, commemorating 75 years of independence currently. So as part of this, IIIT Kalyani is organizing this webinar on Indian knowledge systems. And we have with us today Professor Prabhakar Sharma, our very beloved P. Sharma sir, who would be delivering a talk on science in ancient India. So when I say P. Sharma sir, he is the, I have to, tell a couple of things. He's the first person any PRLite would meet, any student who comes to the PRL for the first time would meet. And it was the same with me. And for all the years he was there, his support was immense. I mean, like now looking back, I can say that, we were so pampered by him. So much that, like, even during my PhD interview, I was a summer trainee there, and all the students were going to Mount Abu and Udaipur Solar Observatory for a tour, and I was supposed to attend the PhD interview. So I went like, "Sir, all the summer trainees are going to Mount Abu." And the sir said, "So, like, sir, everybody is going, and I have to give the interview. Like, you also want to go?" Like, sir, I don't want to, accept it. Like, ठीक है, घूम के आओ, फिर मैं तुम्हारा interview लेता हूँ. Don't worry. That's the type of support we have received. So much pampering, and so thank you, sir, for all those things that you have done for all of us, actually. But that was some story from my side. But to introduce, I have to formally introduce you for this talk. So give me 2 more minutes. For everybody, for the benefit of everybody, our speaker today, Professor Prabhakar Sharma. Professor Prabhakar Sharma, he's a retired professor from Physical Research Laboratory, Ahmedabad. He completed his PhD in 1976 and has made many contributions to science in different areas, including ionospheric studies, hydrology, and paleoclimate. He's a fellow of the Gujarat Science Academy and since 2005, and as head academic services at PRL during 98 to 2007, he was responsible for coordinating various academic activities at PRL, including the doctoral and the postdoctoral programs, project training of engineering students, summer projects, arranging conferences and public lectures, public exhibitions showcasing the significant contributions of PRL. That is how we every PRLite remembers him as our P. Sharma sir. He has authored more than 125 papers in refereed scientific national and international journals. He has written over 25 popular articles on historical developments in science and technology, particularly astronomy, rocket and satellite technology, various missions to the moon and Mars, etc. These have been published in the journal Lab Experiments. It's being published by Kamaljit Instrumentation and Service Unit, Bangalore. He has also authored 8 papers documenting India's contribution to science from Vedic times till the present. Together with some more papers to be written on the subject, these will be eventually published as a book. So, sir, we are very eagerly waiting to hear from you more about this, and the stage is all yours. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and, delivering this lecture. Professor Prabhakar Sharma.
Okay. Thank you, Uma, for kind words and for inviting me for this talk. In fact, at the outset, I should mention that what I'm going to present is a joint work of myself and Dr. Jitendra Kumar, who is no more with us now. He succumbed to corona a few months ago. And actually, we would have started writing the book, but because of his death, we have postponed the project for a while. So anyway, what I would like to tell you is the science in India from Vedic times to about 1000 AD. I'm not, or 1500 AD. I'm not going to tell you about the recent ones. Maybe that will be a part of some separate talk. But what I'm going to tell you is how science in the Vedic and post-Vedic period developed, and what are the main contributions. So I'll start with my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so that is the thing. No problem. Okay, so that is the title, you are all aware. I've written a small extract, and what I would like to highlight is that many of these contributions have been largely ignored by the West, except for a few. And part of the reason is that British, when they were ruling India, they took away most of our manuscripts. Many of them were translated into different languages, German, French, and so on. And many of the scientists use them without really acknowledging them. So I think that is not the way science is done. But anyhow, now it's coming to light. And part of the thing, credit actually should go to Max Muller, who was a German scholar. He translated all the Vedas, 4 of them now, and he highlighted some of the parts. So India has a rich history of scientific accomplishments. In the 5th century AD, nearly 1000 years before Copernicus, Aryabhatta was a very famous astronomer. We should call him Aryabhatta 1 because he is also Aryabhatta 2. That the Earth spins on its axis. Now, this knowledge basically of what I'm going to talk mostly is intuitive. Our rishis had no experimental labs, facilities, etc. They only conceptualized things. So most of the things, they sort of intuition they had, and most of our science is based on intuition. Of course, some experiments were also done later, but not in the Vedic times. Some of the things which they were discovered intuitively also was like Planck's postulate of light quanta, Einstein's mass energy equivalence, the relation, famous equation, Bohr's model of atomic structure, which is actually is similar to the model of the solar system with planets going around the sun. And these were mostly on intuitive reasonings. But of course, in course of time, these things got validated by rigorous mathematical treatment as well as observational evidence. Similarly, many of the Vedic hymns and the results they got, they were intuitively done first, but have now been experimentally verified. As an example, pi and root 2 were known to our Vedic seers long ago. In fact, there is a Shulva Sutra given by many people, including Bodhayan and all that. Several people gave. It's also called Sulva Sutra, but basically it is, Shulva means rope. And these ropes were used to make, these Havan Kundas, altars for performing yagnas, and they were used for measurement. Now this measurement involved circles, triangles, squares, and root 2 came in. Now they didn't know root 2 at that time, but an expression was given which is 1 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 divided by 3 into 4 minus 1 divided by 3 into 4 into 34. Now this is actually given only intuitively. Sorry, there is some interruption, it seems. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay.
The presentation just stopped, actually.
Okay, I'll start it again.
Voice is very poor, not audible.
Not audible?
Yeah, absolutely non-audible.
Non-audible. Okay, let's see what is.
I can hear you clearly.
But I
actually.
can hear you quite well.
Yeah.
Is it a general problem or some people have this problem?
I can hear you clearly.
You're audible loud and clear, no issues.
I think some people have problem, but most are able to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very
Okay,
clear.
then we'll continue.
Actually, sound level is very low.
Sound thoda bada.
Audio is very low.
Can I control it from my side or you will? Uma, you
Yes, you can control. You can little make it high because it's not audible.
I think, sir, the only thing you can do is, speak slightly closer to your mic, because increasing volume on your end is not going to help.
Okay. Am I audible now? Hello. Am I?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir. Please
yes.
continue. Please continue.
Yes.
Is it better
Yes.
now?
If you can use headphones,
Yeah, it's
if you have
better.
headphones with you.
Okay, I'll try to get a headphone meanwhile. So meanwhile, we can continue.
I think those with audio problem can use headphones. It will be clear.
Should I also use headphone? No, I don't think I need.
No, sir. It's
Okay.
It's fine. Please
Now, some
continue.
of the acharyas who were eminent rishis are Acharya Kapil, 3000 BC. BC, this BC is now known as BC, before Common Era. Earlier it was known as BC, before Christ, but now it is before Common Era, just to be religion independent. Now just see, it's about 5000 years ago when we started, Bhaskaracharya in the 12th century, before Christ, 12 BCE, Acharya Bharadwaj, 800 BCE, and he was a pioneer of aviation technology in India. Acharya Kanad, he was founder of atomic theory, and also he was associated, he also gave the theory of gravity. In fact, people now say that Newton's theory of gravity and Newton's laws of motion should actually go to Kanad. The credit should go to Kanad. Then Acharya Charak, he was father of medicine. You may be aware of Charak Samhita, and it's a very elaborate system of medicine, traditional medicine, including about 125 herbs that were found in India and around. And a lot of research was done actually. Then Sushruth, he was father of surgery. In fact, anywhere in the world, he actually started surgery, and he had many surgical implements. He had things for giving anesthesia and so on. So he used to perform complicated surgeries. So in fact, he should be called as father of surgery in the entire world. Then Varamihira was an eminent astrologer and astronomer. In fact, this word astrologer is not in the sense of astrologers today. In fact, earlier astronomy was known also as astrology. In fact, astrology at that time involved motion of the planets, movement of the planets, eclipses, and so on. So it's not the fortune telling like modern astrologers, but it was actually a part of astronomy. And of course, Aryabhatta, there was Aryabhatta 1 and 2, and both of them were astronomers, mathematicians. Then we have Acharya Patanjali. This is also 200 BCE. He was father of yoga. You must have heard of Patanjali's Ashta Yoga. Then Nagarjuna was a wizard of chemical science. Now, in my talk today, I will not talk about the last 3 or 4. I will confine myself only to physics, astronomy, and a little amount of chemistry, maybe. Okay. So this is what I have said. Now I'll start with the presentation on physics. Now, our ancient rishis were always interested in estimating the velocity of light, because sun used to give light, and people were interested to know how much time it takes. And this is a historical perspective. It started with, I'll just give a modern perspective. Romer was there, Danish astronomer. He estimated the speed of light at 2/3 the current value by observing eclipses of Io, which is one of the Jupiter's moons. Then Newton refined this a little bit. Then Huygens built on Romer's work and came up with the speed of light that is about 75% of the value we have today. That is 300,000 kilometers per second. Then in the 20th century, we had Foucault and Michelson, the famous Michelson-Morley experiment. And what we have now is the value given by these people. But you see, in 14th century, Common Era, sage Sayanacharya, he was a rishi, and he gave a shloka, which is Tatha Smrite Yojana Nam Sastre Dve Dveshate Dvecha Yojane Ekena Nimrishardhena Kramaman, which in English it means the light of sun traverses 2202 yojanas. This is all included in the shloka. In one nimisharda. Nimisharda is half a nimisha. Now I'll tell you what are these. Nimisha is a unit of time, which is 0.2112 seconds. Yojana is a unit of distance, which is 9.09 miles. Therefore, speed of light is 2202 yojanas in half a nimisha, which comes out to be 1,89,546 miles per second. And the current value is 1,86,000 miles per second. So you see, our value in Vedic times was much better than what was estimated in the 17th, 18th century. Now, it's interesting to also note, many of you would have learnt about Hanuman Chalisa. Many of do recitation of this every day. And there is a chopai in this, 18th chopai, which reads, Jug Sahastra Yojan Par Bhanu, Lilo Tahi Madurfan Janu. It means that Hanumanji thought that sun is like a sweet fruit and he wanted to eat it. So he estimated the distance, and how much was it? Yug is 12,000 varsh. Yug Sahastra. Sahastra means 1,000. Yojan means 8 miles. So therefore, the distance between sun and earth, when Hanumanji was standing, is 12,000 into 1,000, that is Sahasra, into 8, which is 1,153 million kilometers. And so Tulsidas ji gave this number, and the current value is 15,000 million kilometers, so which is quite close actually. You see, Tulsidas ji was in 16th century, and he had no way to measure the distance, and there was no other person who gave. But you see how, so this was all intuitive. How he would have estimated this distance. Of course, he would have taken clue from some of the Vedas and the writings. Then I come to Rishi Kanad and laws of motion. Now, all of us know that Newton gave the laws of motion. And in fact, there has been some research done on it, and it was found that in Newton's library, there was a copy of Rishi Kanad's writing. And it seems he borrowed this idea from Rishi Kanad and never acknowledged it. In fact, they found a manuscript which was even underlined by Newton. Anyway, this is history. Now, what did Kanad say on this, laws of motion? So he says, he gave the following thing. The first one is, Vega Nibitta Visheshta Karmano Jayate. Action of objects generates motion. Now you see, he didn't know about force at that time. So Veg was the thing, the action. The second one was, now this is in fact very similar to Newton's first law. Then Vegah nimittat prekshat karmano jayate niyate kriya prabandhetu. Now, external action being directional causes the motion to be directional. Then Vega Sanyoga Vishesh Virodhi means an equal and opposite action can utilize the motion. So this is something like the Newton's third law. So it seems Newton got this idea from Carnot's work and he formulated these laws. Now Brahmagupta was a rishi about 598. He lived between 598 and 668. And he described Gurutvakarsan. He in fact named it as Gurutvakarsan, the attractive force of the earth, that is gravity. And he also described it in a heliocentric view of the solar system, which was first defined by Aryabhatta. Now, many of these things were worked upon by many people. And it is rather surprising that many of them, or most of them, were aware of what was done by others. Now, this is very interesting because communication was a problem, traveling was a problem, even writing was a problem. You know, people, there was no computers, no ink even. People used to write on bhojpatras with natural colors and, you know, pencils made of bamboo things. And, you know, how people knew about others' work is very interesting, with lots of restrictions on travel and so on and so forth. So, in fact, he said, the earth on all its sides is the same. All people on earth stand upright and all heavy things fall down to the earth by a law of nature, which is the attractive force of the earth. Similar to, and it keeps things on the earth's surface like, you know, the nature of water which flows. Now, you see, this is something very interesting that we talked of electrovoltaic battery, the cells. But Rishi Lagad in 1315 BC, he gave this shloka, Yatha Shikha Mayuranam Naganam Manyo Tatha Tad Vedang Shastranam Gaditam Murdne Vartite. Now, this is something to tell about mathematics. I think this caption is a little wrong. So, the importance of mathematics was realized by as early as 1350. So, you know, the people realized that mathematics is going to be the, you know, the basic fundamental thing in sciences, including astronomy and so on. So, this was something very interesting. Now comes the construction of an electrovoltaic cell. You know, we thought that this was made in 19th century or even slightly earlier. But you see, Agastya Samhita, which was written in 2000 BC, here, tells you how to make an electrovoltaic cell. The shloka there is taken from Agastya Samhita. Sansthapi mrandmaye patre tamrapatram susanskritam sadayeti shikra grivena chadarvi kanstha Dastalosho nidhatvaya pardachistata tata Sayoga jayate tejo mitra varuna sangitam. Mitra varuna is the electricity, actually, the name for electricity. So what he said is, you take an earthen pot, which is shown on the right, you put a copper sheet in it and shiki griva. You know, people thought that shiki griva is, you know, that neck of a peacock. But then realized that this cannot happen. Then you said put some wet sawdust and then mercury and then put zinc and you join two wires and then electricity. Mitra Varun Shakti is electricity. Now you see, this is something very interesting. You know, many of these things were not discovered. You know, mercury, for example, was discovered in Europe only in the 17th century. And they didn't know what it was. So they called it, since it was flowing very freely, they called it quicksilver because, you know, it moves like, it is like silver and flew. But, you know, at that time in India, people knew about mercury, people knew about copper, people knew about zinc. So the metallurgy was a very advanced science in India. And this is rather surprising. Now further, Rishi Agastya wrote, so you see, he even did this electrolysis. He wrote, Anane jal sangvasi prano daneshu vayushu evam shatana kumbhana sanyoga karya krismata vayu bandhak vastrena nibaddho yanamastake udanah swalagutve vibhartya kashayanakam. Now you see, he says, if you join this 100 of such kumbhas and put water in it, then water will disintegrate into oxygen and hydrogen. oxygen he called is pranvayu because we breathe it, and udan vayu is hydrogen, which is light. So he says, if you put this udan vayu in a tight cloth, then you can fly. So in fact, the origin of Viman Vidya actually came, balloons came later. But Rishi Agastya knew about this, that hydrogen is filled in balloons, or that time balloons were not there, but you take a cloth which is impermeable and then, it can fly. Now you see this polishing of metals. Electroplating was known at the time of Agastya. You read his shloka, Pratrim Swarna Rajata Lepa, Sanskriti Ruchyate, Yavakshadamayo Dhanau, Sushakta Jalasannidau, Achadeti Tattamram, Swarnena Rajatenva. Swarnena Rajaten is gold and silver. Suvarna Lipta Tattamam, Tamram, Chanta Kumbha Miti Smratam. So you see, you take gold and silver, then you take Sushak Jal is acid, they call it Tejab ka ghol is Sushakt Jal, and then this you take Yogshar, which is nitrate of silver and gold, and you put it on, so it can cover actually copper. So copper can be electroplated with silver and gold. So that copper which is electroplated was called as Chat Kumbha by him. Okay. So you see, the science of electroplating was known in the time of Agastya. Very surprising. People have done this electroplating but have never acknowledged that it was done by Agastya. Okay. So there are many more, but there is a limitation on time. So I will now come to mathematics. Now, mathematics was very advanced in times of Veda and thereafter, and particularly Indian contributions to mathematics are enormous. This discovery of zero, discovery of infinity, discovery of binary system, they were all done by Indians. So you see, there is a shloka here from Rishi Lagad, which was written by him in Vedant Jyotish in about 1200 BCE. This is one of the oldest Jyotish Granth. Jyotish is not really astrology, it is astronomy, So it says, Yatha Shikha Mayuranam, Naganam Manyotak Yatha, Tadvad Vedanka Shastranam, Ganitam Budh Nisthitam. He says, like a peacock has a beautiful neck, and the Shikha or Nag ke bhan mein mani, there is a mani, it is believed that there is a mani which is in a snake. So which means it is at a very high pedestal. So this is something like that. So like that, mathematics is also one of the most important things. Now you see, this is something given by Aryabhatta, which is again intuitive, and this gives you the value of pi. And the shloka from Aryabhatya, this is what I have reproduced here. Chaturdhikam shatamashta gunam dava shashtis tatha sastranam ayuttadvaya vish kambasya sanno vrattah paripaha. In English, it means if a circle has a diameter of 20,000 units, this is all included in the Dvashashti Sastranam is 20,000. Its circumference would be 62,832. Now, I don't know how Aryabhatta found it, which means he knew about pi. So the ratio of the two, which is now known as pi, is 62,832 divided by 20,000, which is approximately 3.1416. But Aryabhatta knew that this is not exact. He probably knew that this is an unending number, 3.14159, and so on and so forth. You can take it to any number of decimal places. So he says it is asanna. Asanna in Sanskrit means it is an approximation and not exact. So you see, look at the honesty of Aryabhatta, that he acknowledged that he is giving only an approximate number of pi and not exact value. Similarly, Indians specialized in geometry, and many of these things were given in things like Sulba Sutra, Vedang Jyotisha, Chandas Shastra, and Tantra. They deal with geometry and mathematics. Now you see, this is what is now known as Pythagoras theorem, but actually it should be told as, it should be named as Bodhayana theorem. And this is what exactly defines the Pythagoras theorem. Dirgha chatur sasya kshanaya rajjuh parshvamani tiryagmani cha yat prathak bhute kurutastu bhayam karoti. Now, tiryag means actually is a diagonal. Okay, I will not explain the entire shloka. So, it means in English, for a right angle triangle, the square of the length of the hypotenuse is the sum of the square of the length of the two sides. This is what the English translation of the shloka is, and this is exactly Pythagoras theorem. Pythagoras, actually, it seems he came to India, he saw this work, and he formulated this, but never acknowledged it. Now, this is the dishonesty of people in the West, that they never acknowledge Indian contributions. To some extent, the trend continues even now. Most of our fellow scientists don't acknowledge our work. I think this is a very tragic kind of a situation, and this must be corrected. Now, the area was measured, which is a fundamental entity. The concept of area came because they were making these altars for performing yagnas, and they made various things, circles, squares, and triangles, and so on. So there are several granthas written on this. Saptapatha Brahmana, written by Yagnavalkya Rishi, 900 BC. Then Bodhayadra Sulak Sutras. Sulak Sutras were written by many people, and Bodhayana Sulak Sutra is one of the famous ones, which is believed to have been written between 700 and 400 BC. And this was, as I told you, for basically ritualistic religion performances. Now, there is a shloka which says, circle of radius 1 unit, when converted into a square with their side as 1.7 unit, equals its area. They are equal in area. And this fact was known to Vedic Indus Valley civilization scholars. Now, Panini was a Sanskrit grammarian, basically, but he also wrote on other things. In fact, what Sanskrit we learn now is basically because of Panini. The Vedic Sanskrit was very difficult to understand. Although I graduated in Sanskrit, I don't understand much of it. But I understand Panini's grammar, because Panini simplified the grammar. So he's basically a grammarian, but he also dealt with mathematics, for example. He formulated this Boolean logic, which now we use in computers, the null operator, and a precursor of what we call is Backus-Naur form, which is used in present-day computer and programming languages. I will not go into details of it. It is little elaborate. Then another Sulba Sutra was written by Apastamba Rishi, who was about 600 BC. And it contains a method of squaring the area of a circle. And what he did was he divided a circle into 7 equal parts, calculated the square root of 2 correctly to 5 decimal places, solved general linear equation, and he also gave an experimental proof of Pythagoras theorem, using computation of area. Now, there was a historian called Albert Burke, who claims that this was the original proof of the theorem which Pythagoras copied. Please note this word copied when he visited India. So he found this computation of Apastamba Rishi, and Pythagoras stole it. Then, of course, we have binary numbers. Then there is a scientist called Berend van Noten. He showed that binary numbers were known at the time of Pingla's work in Chanda Shastra. Pingla was in 1st century BC. Okay, that's about 2300 years or even more before present. And he defined them to classify Vedic meters. And as you know, the use of binary numbers simplified his calculations profoundly rather than using the decimal system. Now there is a Sri Yantra. Many of you would have seen Sri Yantra. This is put in temples, and it has 9 triangles inscribed within a circle, which leads to formation of 43 smaller triangles. Now, during the Middle Ages, the yantra was made both on flat and curved surfaces. Now, this is very important. On a flat surface, you can make it, but to make it on a curved surface, you need non-Euclidean geometry. And please note, non-Euclidean geometry, knowledge of non-Euclidean geometry was several centuries before it was done in Europe. So we had all kinds of things, and they are not known and not People are not even aware. They have not given credit for this. Now comes the infinity. Zero and infinity are in fact gifts of India. Now, concept of infinity has come from a very philosophical musings. And this Brihadaranya Upanishad, which has a shloka like Om Purnamidah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Now, this is a Shanti mantra we recite every day before prayer. Now, philosophically, if you take, this is everything is Purna. Purna means complete, full. So this is also complete, that is also complete. And if you remove complete from the complete, what still remains is complete. Now, this is philosophically how probably the concept of infinity has evolved. So this is what I told you. Infinity, for infinity, the Sanskrit word is khara. Okay. So, and Bhaskara too, he wrote the book called Bij Ganita. In fact, what we learn in Hindi, Bij Ganita, was actually coined by Bhaskara too. Okay. And he said, Asmin Vikaraha Kharena, Rasha Vapi, Pravisteshwapi Nisweteshu, Bahushwapi Syat, Laya Srishtikale, Anant Achute Bhut Ganeshu Yadvat. Translated in Hindi, it means मात्रा को जोड़ने और घटाने से खहर में कोई परिवर्तन नहीं होता. Which means if you subtract infinity from infinity, infinity remains. Okay, so that is philosophical version. But Bhaskara too, in the 12th century AD, he defined it more precisely in his Bij Ganita and Goladhyay with spheres and Grah Ganita with planetary motions. So he defined in Bij Ganita. He gave an unambiguous definition of infinity, which was more mathematical. He says any term divided by zero, there is a shloka for it, but I have not reproduced it here. Any term divided by zero is infinity, and the product of zero with any number is zero. So you see both zero and infinity. Of course, he didn't define the division of zero by zero. He didn't realize it actually, that it is indeterminate. Okay. Now, this is something from this is what I have already said. Okay. Sridhara Acharya was generally known as Sridhara, was an eminent mathematician. He wrote a book called Patiganit Sangraha. It discusses counting of numbers, measures, natural numbers, mathematical operations of multiplication, division, zero, squares, cubes, fractions, interest calculations, and mensuration. And his exposition on zero is quite explicit. He defined this like this. If zero is added to any number, there is a shloka on it, but I have not written it. The sum is the same number. If zero is subtracted from any number, the number remains unchanged. And if zero is multiplied by any number, the product is still zero. Then Mahaviracharya, commonly known as Mahavira, he was a Jain scholar. In fact, a lot of Jain Munis they were very good in mathematics. Jain mathematics is very famous. I have given only few, but there are many more Jain scholars who have given. They were quite strong in mathematics. So he established the terminology for things like equilateral and isosceles triangle, rhombus, circle, semicircle. He also gave algebraic identities and found a formula for combination and permutation, what we study in school. He devised a formula which approximates area and perimeter of ellipses, found methods to calculate square and cube roots of a number. Now you would ask me where all this was acquired. Many of them were actually purely intellectual pursuits, but some of them were used in the Jain designs. And he also concluded that square root of a negative number does not exist. You see, 800 AD, he realized that square root of a negative number does not exist. Halayudha was also a mathematician, 1000 AD. He wrote Mrit Sanjeevani, which is a commentary on Pingla's Chanda Shastra, which gives a clear description of Meru Prastara, which is Pascal's triangle. Now it is known as Pascal's triangle, but we give no credit to Halayudha for this. Okay. Hemchandra was another scholar. He was also a Jain. And he gave an early version of what is known as Fibonacci sequence. And no credit is given to Hemchandra for this. So he considered the number of cadences of length n and showed that these could be found by adding a short syllable to a cadence of length n minus 1 or a long syllable of cadence 1 minus 2, n minus 2. So this is a recursive relation which was given later actually by Fibonacci, which is Fn equal to Fn minus 1 plus Fn minus 2. But anyway, the original form of this was given by Hemchandra in nearly 1000 AD. Narayan Pandita was another eminent mathematician, and he actually didn't do much of original work, but he compiled a book called Bijganit Vatamsa, which means he combined, he described various arithmetic operations in a very lucid manner. And of course, his work led to many developments in combinatorics. And there is a person called Floker who writes that his texts were the most significant mathematical treatises in Sanskrit after those of Bhaskara too. So, these people actually studied works of Aryabhatta, Bhaskara, and so on, and they tried to refine them and actually make some, explain them very lucidly. You see, so this was rather surprising that they were aware of this and they were eager to improve upon what was done by their predecessors. And this is something very interesting. There were no conferences at that time, no internet, not even written texts were available mainly. In fact, many of the Vedas were lost. Actually, originally there were 18 Vedas and we now have only 4. They were all transmitted by Shruti, what you call is from guru to disciples and so on and so forth. In that process, 14 of them were lost. And this is very sad because even what remains as 4 are very precious. Because there was no script at that time when Vedas were written. So, after only Vedvyas only wrote them down actually. Vedvyas must be having very good memory. So he wrote them down and therefore 4 survive now. Now, he also gave some things of, he contributed to algebra. In fact, he wrote this also book, which is a commentary on Lilavati of Bhaskara 2. Lilavati is a very profound work of Bhaskara. In fact, Lilavati was Bhaskara's daughter, Bhaskara 2's daughter. And he named this book after her. And you see, this book, Karn Pradiptika, it gives 7 different methods for finding squares of numbers, a contribution that is original. And he also contributed to algebra, and he formulated this, what is now known as magic squares. Now in Kerala, the Kerala school of astronomy and mathematics was very strong in the 14th, 15th century. And Madhava was a very famous astronomer and also mathematician. And many of you may be aware there is this Madhava Gregory series. Fortunately, they gave credit to Madhava, and the Gregory series was known as Madhava Gregory series. I'm not going into details of this, but this is one instance where credit was given to Madhava. Now, Madhava also gave series expansion for trigonometric functions like sine, cosine, arctan, etc. And this school of Kerala in the 15th, 16th century was very strong. Now, Indians had a lot of contribution in solving equations. And Sudhakar Swami was one of them in the 9th century AD. And he was best known for his commentary on Brahmagupta's work. And it shows how algebra developed in India. And he gave the Kutaka method, Kutaka 10 method, which is renamed by Bijganita, renamed by him actually, which gives method for solving, equations in unknown variables. Now, this problem of indeterminate equations also attracted people. Now, this is what you now know as the Diophantine equations that have the form of X plus By equal to C. You know, this is the Diophantine equation. In China, they call it Chinese remainder theorem. Now, Aryabhatta.
Slides are not visible, sir.
Uh,
Can you all see the slides?
yes, sir.
Are you able to see?
Yeah, the slides, no, somebody tried to press link and got lost actually. Sir, can you, Sharma sir, can you again share the slide once?
Can you now see?
I don't think it is
No?
visible actually.
No,
No.
it is there, but in a smaller format.
We have to
Yeah.
pin that slide.
It's there, Uma.
If we pin, then it would be okay, sir.
Sorry?
Just on the slide,
Should I
it is a smaller size, or smaller screen. You just right click and pin it.
Right click it.
Right click and pin.
Okay,
Pin
just-
and pin option is there. Pin.
Let me call somebody. I'm not an expert on this. Let me call somebody. Just wait.
No, sir, you have not to do anything. The audience can do it. It is not from at your end.
No. आना एक मिनट. वो मेरी स्लाइड तो दिख नहीं रही है. वो स्लाइड्स क्यों नहीं दिख रही उनको?
Actually, somebody tried to, share the screen, so ये हो गया.
What should I do to make it more visible? Tell me.
Sir, you can stop sharing and start sharing again.
Yeah.
Okay, stop sharing and start.
डॉक्टर साहब नीचे अगर आपके इसमें एक एरो लगा है पॉइंटिंग अपवर्ड्स,
Pointing up.
That's bad.
तो उसको आप क्लिक कर दीजिए. हाँ, आ गया. गुड, वेरी नाइस.
बस हो गया.
You are able to get it now?
Thank you.
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
good now. It is there.
Okay, you should have told me. So anyway, Aryabhatta also dealt with this problem in 621 CE. So this is this 7th century, and he called this as Kuttaka method. Kuttaka means pulverize or break into small pieces, and which involves actually a recursive algorithm for writing original factors in smaller numbers. So this Kuttaka method was used by him to solve this first order Diophantine equations. Now I'll go into astronomy. For lack of time, I'm not able to go into details of many of these things. Maybe I should have restricted to a limited number of slides. No, there were two Aryabhattas, 1 and 2. So the Aryabhatta 1 was in about 500 AD, 476 AD. And he founded this Nalanda University. Nalanda University is one of the most important universities in the world and of higher learning. And many of our scholars, they studied there. In fact, I have written a paper on Nalanda University, which I would like to share with you people. And you see what kind of university system we had in 500 AD, and it was never there in any other part of the world. So anyway, Aryabhatta was the first. He was there. He was the vice chancellor of that university, in fact, in our language. We call it, they called it Kulpati or Kuladhipati. So he was first to deduce that Earth is spherical in shape and rotates on its own axis, which leads to formation of day and night. And he also was the one who first said that moon doesn't have an inherent light, but it shines because of sunlight, the reflected light of the sun. And he also studied solar and lunar eclipses. And he correctly said that this is because of the shadow caused by the moon and earth, and not, somebody eating Rahu and Ketu eating, like people believe. Now, Varamihira was another versatile scientist in about 500 AD. He was in Ujjain. He was royal astrologer of King Vikramaditya. And, there was an observatory in Ujjain, and he was connected with that. He was contemporary almost of Aryabhatta I. And he also dealt with gravity. And he was the first to say that the force of gravity keeps bodies bound to the Earth's surface. But Varamihira did more than that. In fact, I have a book of Varamihira dealing with groundwater. And one sentence I have reproduced from that plants and termites serve as indicator for presence of groundwater. this is true. In fact, I worked on hydrology, and I found that in many rocky areas, particularly, if you take the tree lining, then it tells you something about water. For example, there are many trees like neem tree, which never die even in the harshest summer. And the important property of neem trees is that its roots go down in the ground till they encounter water. So it means if a neem tree has survived at a place in a rocky area, then underground water must be there. So some of these properties Varamihira used, and he said the presence of these trees and even termites, they can help you to locate where groundwater is, and you dig wells there. Now, this Brahmagupta, which I have already explained. Lalla was another mathematician and astronomer. And in fact, he was an experimental astronomer. He made many instruments, and he studied stars and constellations and so on and so forth. Some of his instruments are shown here. I'm not going to details of this, but he actually made these instruments and studied stars, their elevation, and many of these were used for navigation. In India, navigation was there, navigation in the sea and all that. So many of these things were used for navigation at that time. And now we know that sextant was made and all that. But before that, what was known as astrolabe, it was used for navigation. Our astronomers were actually mostly using mathematics. So they were quite mathematical, not just by logic or whatever, by intuition, but and astronomy needed, the position of stars, and they all needed sine, cosine, and all that. So in fact, sine was invented. Sine, cosine things were invented by Indian mathematicians. They called them Jya and Koja, and they even gave a table of values, sine and cosine values of an angle. And Govinda Swami was one who was a mathematical astronomer in 800, in 9th century AD. Shankar Narayan, again from Kerala School of Mathematics and Astronomy. Kerala School was also very strong in astronomy, in fact. And first astronomical observatory was started at a place called Kodangallur. This is a modern name. The earlier name was something different. And he even wrote a book called Laghu Bhaskariya Vivaran, which was a commentary on Laghu Bhaskariya of Bhaskara 1. Bhaskara 1 had written this Laghu Bhaskariya. Shankar Narayan spoke of a place equipped with instruments in capital city of King Ravi Varma, now known as Kodangallur. Now this observatory was equipped with a sphere, which is a model of celestial sphere. So they knew that this is a sphere, and now what we have in planetariums were made something like that in 9th century AD. Vijayanandi was another one, who was in Varanasi. He made significant contributions to trigonometry, and many of these things were actually lost. Some of them were lost, but there were many Arabic scholars who used to visit India, and Al-Biruni was one of them. And these people even translated many of the things from Sanskrit to Arabic. I mean, look at the tenacity of these people. For an Arab to learn Sanskrit is something very interesting. And, they learned Sanskrit and then translated into Arabic, Persian. So he dealt with astronomy and true longitudes of sun and moon, length of daylight, lunar and solar eclipses, first visibility of planets, conjunction of planets with each other and with fixed stars, and, trajectory and motions of moon and sun and so on. So wide range of topics were dealt by him. Then, of course, everybody knows about Aryabhatta too, very famous. Our first Indian satellite was named after Aryabhatta. He wrote Mahasiddhanta, a long book containing 18 chapters, and it dealt with mathematical astronomy. And you see, so how mathematics was important, in India is very obvious from this. So like that. Sripati was another astronomer and mathematician. He also dealt with astronomy, and all of them were written in Sanskrit verses actually. It seems Sanskrit is one of the ideal languages for conveying, mathematical things. Some of the shlokas I have reproduced here, and you see how elegantly, Sanskrit has been used to define, speed of light and all those things. So in fact, Sanskrit is the language of mathematics. Okay. Now again, Jain astronomer Mahendra Dayashankar Godsuri, he was known as Suri. He wrote Yantra Raja, which was the first Indian treatise on astrolabe. I talked about astrolabe. And in the Mughal period, several such astrolabes were established in India. And so Mahendra Suri used it for measuring angle of inclination of the ecliptic. Now, I think I will stop here, but I'll just say a few words about what some eminent people spoke of our Vedas. Many of the Nobel laureates knew about Vedas, and Vedanta texts. Vedanta is actually text which explain concept of Vedas in simple language. Okay. Schrodinger, you would have heard of it. He won Nobel Prize for his famous wave equation. And he had abiding interest in Hindu scriptures, which include Vedas, Yoga, Sankhya philosophy. I have not dealt with Sankhya philosophy in this talk because it is very profound and it needs a lot of explanation. And it seems he used to regularly read Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. And some people say that the duality of wave particle, in fact, came from some of the shlokas he read in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, I will not reproduce those shlokas here. Oppenheimer was one who was known as father of the atomic bomb. And he wrote, access to the Vedas is the greatest privilege this century may have over other previous centuries. In fact, after the nuclear bomb was exploded by America in 1945, Oppenheimer admitted that he had got the idea of making nuclear weapons from Bhagavad Gita. There is in fact a shloka in Bhagavad Gita, which I will not reproduce here. But there is something like that it is said that, Krishna says, I am the destroyer of the world and so on. So he got the idea of this nuclear bomb from Bhagavad Gita, reading Bhagavad Gita. Einstein, you all know, he says we should be thankful to Indians who taught us how to count, the zero and decimal number system, without which any worthwhile scientific discovery would not have been possible. Now, this you see something very important statement by Albert Einstein. So I think I end here. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer. I could not deal with many of the things, but I only sort of gave a bird's eye view. It requires several lectures to deal with many of these things. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. For it's really overwhelming that there's so much work done by our ancestors centuries ago, and we are still at a loss, and we are still trying to figure things out. The forum is open for discussion. Anybody has something to say, please feel free to join.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Ammaji, you have made a very nice presentation, and some things we knew, but there are many things that you presented which were totally unknown to many of us, including me. And somewhere you mentioned that there were 18 Vedas.
Yes.
And now we have only 4 of them.
Yes.
So how do we say that there were 14 are lost?
I do not know exactly the reference for this, but I'll look into it. But it is widely believed that there were 18 Vedas, and they were propagated by word of mouth, from Guru to Shishya and Shishya to another Shishya. And I don't know who has made this statement, but thank you. I'll look into this, that who has made this statement, but I have read it somewhere that originally there were 18 Vedas and now what remains is only 4 Vedas.
Actually, Dr. Saab, what you're telling is right. In fact, there are 18. 4 are treated as the main Vedas, but there are other 14. They are smaller in content, although they are equally valuable, but they are less referred. But they are there, and I've also read it. That
Yes.
the other 14 are comparatively smaller in content.
But I don't know whether written script is available. They are available in written form.
I had seen it on a YouTube video where some teacher was explaining that 18 Vedas and all that.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Sharma, I also have a query.
Yes.
I just wanted a confirmation.
Yes.
Somewhere I read that our ancient mathematicians, they also had some idea of Hyperion logarithms, and they had some idea about the value of E and what we hear. I'm not very sure about it, but is there some evidence or something available about the knowledge of logarithms?
But I have not seen any reference to whether they knew about log. Although log and E, I don't think they knew about. To my knowledge, no, but I'll look into it. If somebody has said this. Okay.
Dr. Sharma?
Yes.
Shivaraman here.
Yes, Shivaraman, how are you?
It is a general question.
Yes.
In spite of all this knowledge earned early, what happened further? How we lost all this knowledge and why we could not progress ahead of the rest of the world? Is
Yes.
there any reason
No.
for that?
Well,
Is
I'll
there
tell you.
any-
I'll
is
tell
it
you.
that our culture, we lost our culture? Is it a
Yes.
reason or any other? Is it a suppression by foreigners? Can you just give a reason?
No, there are two things actually. You know, to tell you historically, you know, the British East India Company took away all our precious knowledge treasures, Vedas and Vedangas and Upanishads. Many of them they took away and they deposited them in a library in England, and they were not really accessible to us. Many of us, and you know, there were some in Nalanda University library, but it was burnt by people. So all the library was lost. So our treasures we lost. And in fact, we should thank Max Muller that he reinvented Vedas, to be very frank. You know, Max Muller was one who was German. He learned Sanskrit. He translated from Sanskrit to German. He also learned English. And many of much of the knowledge of Vedas actually we then of course later Maharshi Dayanand and Aurobindo and a lot of people but you see by that time we were too late because these Britishers and other people in the world, Germans, you know, Hitler was also after people to, you know, study Vedas and find out how to make atom bombs because Hitler probably knew that this atom bomb is being made. And so, you know, they were after this. In fact, it is very surprising that we lost our treasure. And partly because, you know, by the time Western science had already advanced, by the time you know we realized that Vedas contain all this, they had already extracted you know the best out of this, you know. So then by the time we realized the importance, they were already much ahead of us. So that is why, and then the experimental facilities they developed, we didn't have those kinds of things. So because of their experimental facilities and the ideas which they gathered from Vedas and other things, also they had their own this R&D kind of thing. So partly because the continuity was lost. You see, if we had continued, then probably would have been we would have an edge. Probably we would have had an edge over them. But the edge was lost because all our scriptures were stolen by them. They were virtually stolen. In fact, somewhere I have read that you know one of the British Governor Generals in India said that if you want to dominate over Indians, you take away all their scriptures and you know take them to England and don't let them know that they were so advanced. So you know culturally and psychologically they told us that you have nothing, so you know then you can dominate a person. And you know these English schools were started, but Sanskrit was never taught here. In fact, you may be surprised to know that more American universities learn Sanskrit than Indian universities, and this is rather sad and surprising. And now also Sanskrit, I don't think we are teaching, it's only an optional subject, and I don't think Sanskrit is being taught. I learned Sanskrit because I had some fascination for Sanskrit, and I graduated in Sanskrit. In fact, even before I graduated in science, so I could have done an MA in Sanskrit and become a Sanskrit teacher somewhere. So that is how my Sanskrit is little good, so that I can read Vedas firsthand. You know, not the translation. Sometimes translations are also misleading. Okay, like Khahara is one doesn't know what is Khahara unless you know that Khahara in Sanskrit means infinity. So you should have a first-hand sort of idea of what it is actually. So many of the things I read from Vedas, you know, and not just read from Google and so on, because Google is also written by people who have no real knowledge of things. Many of the times they are, but so you know, first-hand knowledge of Sanskrit is very essential. but we have lost touch with Sanskrit. We don't know what it is. And also some of these things like Hanuman Chalisa was not obvious. Many of us recite Hanuman Chalisa but never know that sun earth distance is involved in this. So you see, this is the problem.
Dharmaji, it's very nice that you did not learn more Sanskrit and go become a Sanskrit teacher and came to science, because if that would have been the case, then we would not have learned so many things from you.
No. But you see, it's always been an advantage,
That is very right, Sharmaji, that we are reciting Hanuman Chalisa, Rama and everything, but without understanding the meaning. And actually, we should change our attitude. We should read Bhagavad Gita, one sloka one day, and understand fully. After learning Sanskrit, even I learned Sanskrit till my BSc. Even up to BSc, I studied Sanskrit, and I know very good Sanskrit. And that should be encouraged. And we should tell all the Sanskrit verses understanding the meaning. Without just by reciting, we are doing it, it has no value. Actually, our attitude should change, and then
you are right.
We will be back.
You see, for example, Bhagavad Gita says, it says about many things, about the digestive,
Yes.
Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritah Pranavan Samayukta Pachamannam Chaturvidam. It is about digestive system.
Correct.
And the Vaishwanar is the Jatragni, which is digestive fire. We don't realize it actually.
Correct.
And Prana Pan Samayukta, equalize the Prana and Apan Vayu, and then you have a perfect digestion. So you see, this is what is the problem. Actually, we don't understand. We just recite in our puja and forget about it.
That is not correct. We should understand and recite. Even one or two slokas are good enough. But we should understand.
That's right.
That is it.
Professor Partha Chakravarti, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture. I have a couple of questions.
Yes, please.
So, one is, have you encountered among the measurement units, we have in ancient India many units of time and length and area, but temperature, is there any unit of temperature?
Temperature...
I have tried to find, but I could not find
I
any
also
unit of temperature.
do not remember that I have seen anything on temperature, because partly people were, we didn't have measurement systems of temperature, and people really didn't think that temperature is important, although they knew that sun's temperature is, very high. There are shlokas in Sanskrit that things evaporate in sun and all that. I can recite a shloka next time.
No, because boiling point, melting point.
I think our people were not interested in, or perhaps they were not aware of the importance of temperature measurement.
The second thing is, I will request Uma to connect with you, because I run the National Digital Library of India.
Okay.
And there we would like to get references to all such material which we can collect, because we have collected most of the texts. But if you can give us references to the other texts that you mentioned, and including your writings which are publicly available, if you permit, we would be happy to include them in the National Digital Library Indian Knowledge System.
Please do that. I have sent 2 of my papers to Uma, but there are 6 more papers. So I have written totally about 250 pages on this.
So, sir, if you agree, I will collect them from Uma, get in touch with you, and include them in the National Digital.
No, you can give to Uma your email ID, and I'll send the PDF files of other 6 papers. And so together, about one by one, I'll send about 250 pages that I and my colleague Jitendra wrote.
That will be wonderful, sir. The other thing is that all these other mathematicians, like Hariji mentioned and Professor Sivaraman mentioned, is that while we know of many of the mathematicians, we did not know of some of those whom you have mentioned. So if those, if we get a copy of your presentation and have some more details worked out with you and collect the rest of the material.
Yes, I think Uma is recording my talk.
Yes.
Yes, sir. The talk is being recorded, and you can share the slides also. So maybe if you permit, then I can send it to sir.
Yeah, I will. I will also send you the PowerPoint presentation.
Yes.
I will send a common email to both of you. So then you have.
No,
I'll do that.
Help a little more.
Yes.
Because today's talk, sir has left many things unsaid because of lack of time.
Yes.
All right. So we can stretch time by, even if there are 5 people listening to that, I think, and we record it, it
Yes.
would be very precious. If sir agrees, then we can record all these, and I can put all these. This recording will be in YouTube. If we can record all these and put them into YouTube, and I can integrate them in the National Digital Library, it will be an asset
No,
for us.
in fact, the recording has to be one recording on Indian mathematics, the other recording on Indian astronomy.
So, if you are willing, sir, Uma, if you have, Iman is also there.
Yes.
We can work out. I can help in any way you want.
I will do that, sir. I'll coordinate.
I will see how to plan. In fact, I have something also on Ayurveda. You know how Ayurveda developed in India.
So we actually started a course in IIT Kharagpur. We run a course called Science of Ancient India, Science and Technology of Ancient India.
Yes.
So I developed the syllabus and I gave some introductory lectures. Now I don't participate, but there in the chemistry also, in the technology also, we discussed civil structures, we discussed metallurgy, we discussed chemistry, we discussed physics, astronomy, mathematics. But there are many things here which you have mentioned. We have discussed in details Ayurveda. We have discussed all the material science. We have also discussed material science.
Yes.
So we would be very happy if you could give us a series of lectures, Uma, and we can record them and put them into the National Digital Library. Because
in fact, metallurgy was a very advanced science in India. You know, even before people knew of mercury and gold and silver, we knew how to electroplate them. You see, just look at
you just mentioned today, and I was not aware. We have studied the beam column structures of the Konark Temple and things like that, and figured out how they created those materials and things.
In fact, British learned steel making from India. In fact, when they saw the minaret in Delhi, they sent a team of specialists to take out material from that minaret and studied it. And guy was very smart. He took the material and he started an industry rather than telling to the British government. And he made steel. You know, we used to make steel from the crucible method. I don't know whether you know about it.
Yes.
And you know, it is non-rusting. It doesn't even rust. So you know this rocket making technology by Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. It surprised British. You know, the British were defeated partly. You know, they suffered casualties. They sent somebody to take samples from the Tipu Sultan rockets, and they the gunpowder used and so on. So in fact, the credit for making rockets should go to India and Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. I have written this in one of my papers.
We will collect all of that, sir, and if you are willing, we will disturb you a little more.
No. Please keep disturbing. In fact, I have written up a series of another 25 papers dealing with rocket technology, satellite technology, electronics.
Can we get them if you can?
Well, they are, my colleague has died actually, and I don't have PDF files, but I have the books in which they are reproduced.
Then if you can tell us where those books can be purchased from, we can purchase them.
I will ask his son if he has spare copies of these books. His son is apparently not interested. He doesn't even respond to me. But I have those books. I have those books. I can scan them or do something.
Muma, we can find out how to scan those materials and make it available before.
Absolutely.
I might go and pick up those books.
I have written a book, an article on rocket technology in India. You know how it developed.
Uma, we have a lot of work to do. Iman, you have to help.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
And then IIIT Kalyani can make a repository there. We'll integrate with the National Digital Library.
Absolutely,
sir. You can make an Indian knowledge system repository in IIIT. Some place you can put it there, and we will integrate into that. Credit will be yours, but we will disseminate to everyone.
Credit goes to the author, sir. Credit goes to the author only.
No. There is a saying in English. There is no limit to achievement if you do not care who gets the credit. We'll follow that.
We are very interested. That is why, today Uma informed me, so I was so happy to hear your talk today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will work on this together. Okay.
I will send the emails, sir. I will coordinate.
Okay. Let's remain in touch. And goodbye. Thank you so much for your patience. It was
sir, I think there is Pranshu Joshi. There is a question.
Please.
Sir, basically, I have all the copies of 18 Purans. By God grace, I found it in Haridwar.
Okay.
Namely, they are Agni, Bhagavata, Bhavishya,
There are so
Brahmanda.
many of them.
Yes, I have all the copies. And sir, you were telling about the Ayurveda. It is mainly of Shushrutu Samhita. I have also read it
Yes.
and have a old copy of it that was
Hmm.
also found at that sacred place.
Okay.
But sir, I am trying to make a book by making a type of all the main things that are found in those 18 Purans, so we could save the main topics and it does not erase in further future. So sir, what do you think I should do?
Let me first tell you, these Puranas are very later things. They are, fourth, fifth century. In fact, this Gupta period in India, they belong to that period. Fifth, sixth century AD. You may be aware of that. So
Yes.
they are not very old, and many of the Puranas are not very authentic. Let me tell you this. The Puranas should be taken with a pinch of salt. Many of the Puranas are written by people. It's like Google. You take with a pinch of salt. So they they are not as bad as Google, but they are not as authentic as the Vedas. So the original knowledge, you should not refer much to Puranas but to Vedas. And excellent
Okay, sir.
commentaries on Vedas are available. I have a complete set of commentaries on Vedas by 2-3 authors. The best one is from Sri Ram Sharma Acharya, who is this Gayatri Parivar head. He is no more, but his commentary is very authentic. But there are others, and there are English versions also. Please do not take anything in Purana without questioning them. Puranas are, they call it, Vedas come from God, but Puranas are man-made. So anything is man-made is always problematic. So Puranas are very recent things. 4th, 5th century AD. They're not BC. Vedas are 5,000 years old, 3,000 BC, and so on. Not that Vedas also have some problems. Probably we don't understand them or whatever. They may not be real mistakes, but we may not know the terminology. For example, that is one of the problems. To know Vedic.
But sir,
But please, anything you reproduce from Puranas or you take from Puranas, take with a pinch of salt, because they are not as authentic as Vedas.
but sir, we can see that Brahmanda Puran says that there are Navgrahas.
Yes.
So they have described all the Navgrahas in the name of gods or devtas.
Yes,
And they have also said that it affects everyone's life. And I have come to a point that each and every person is affected by the gravitational force of each and every planet. So sir,
Yes.
maybe they have produced a very high-tech formula that could
Yes.
take everyone futures based on these gravitational effects.
This gravitation, for example, we know that, people on full moon day get affected and so on and so forth. The lunar tides, and they affect people. Many people find it difficult to drive on a full moon day and so on. That is what you call lunatics, the moon's gravity. Now, there are other effects by, other planets also. There may be some effects. These are not really, there may be some, I don't have much idea, but, I mean, people have done a lot of studies, road accidents versus uh, full moon day on a new moon day and so on. But these are all statistical things. You may interpret them in any way. So this is what is the problem.
Just one small interruption. I wanted to tell you, because I was very interested in hearing your interpretation of Hanuman Chalisa there as well as in the Bhagavad Gita. So
Yes.
I had actually interpreted Hanuman as
Yes.
Anuman. Anu means atomic.
Yes.
Okay. And man is self, means mind. So when it is atomic, that is why he says Shukshma Rupa mein Siya hi dikhau. Siya means the force. So
Yes.
when I'm in Shuksh Roop, I am force.
Yes.
Nikat Roop mein Lanka jalao. When I'm in action, then I create fire.
Yes.
So you can actually, I did a part of it, and I was very excited to see what you were saying.
Yes.
The same thing I had done a part of the Bhagavad Gita also.
Yes.
And I had done 3-4 interpretations of many of Tulsidas ji's works.
Yes. Yes.
Where so I would be very interested to get some of your thoughts on them sometime.
Okay. Sometime we'll discuss.
We need
Dr.
to have
Santosh.
more lectures, more elaborate on different topics.
Yes, this was a rather, cursory kind of thing, just stating things, but not really explaining many of the things.
Yeah.
Each one is very profound, each of the thing, each of my slide needs interpretation and explanation. So they are very profound statements,
Right.
They cannot be glossed over in 1 hour lecture or 2 hour lecture. You need a series of lectures explaining the various concepts,
Namaste, sir. This is Santosh from Dehradun.
Yes, Santosh, I remember you.
Yes, sir. When you were academic service head, we were a student at that time, sir. Or thank you for all the help you extended to us.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And it was so fascinating to know that our ancestors have documented many more things which we never knew.
Yes.
And particularly, I was totally fascinated with the information that they had the information about electroplating.
Yes.
We used to electroplate our mass spectrometer slit in Shiv Kumaran's this workshop,
Yes.
and they were knowing long back. So you demonstrated that these are all documented in Vedas, and Vedas are more authentic document of our scientific knowledge.
Yes,
but there are people in India who deliberately try to underscore our credit by our ancestor like Irfan Habib and Romila Thaparji. So have you also checked out some strategy to tame these people and put counter argument so that they could not spread lies among the masses?
You see, this problem I have been also thinking. People have even people have filed court cases against this. I read a report that somebody has filed a court case that many of the claims made in Vedas are wrong. And they have been misinterpreted, actually. What they didn't really mean like that. So you see, there are all kinds of people, who want to denigrate our Hindu culture. Basically, you see, what has happened is that people have associated Veda with Hindu culture. Now, it is true that many of these things are there, but it is religion independent. It is not. It doesn't depend. It is not really just Hinduism.
Yeah.
It is a universal kind of a thing, philosophy. So this is unfortunate. Yes, I am aware people have. In fact, I have a report of a court case also that somebody has put in. Court has put a stay order on it or something that a committee will look into it as usual. So
thank you.
So this is a problem. Okay. Dixit ji, welcome.
Sharmaji, Dixitulu from TRL.
Yes, Dixit ji, I know.
Actually, I forwarded Siddhanta Shiromani written by Arka Swamayadi. He is a professor in Sanskrit University, Tirupati.
Yes.
It was translated to English. I just sent it to you by Rediff mail. Please check in. It has 2 parts.
When did you send it?
Just now I sent it.
Achha, okay. I'll check it.
You just go through it. He is one of my uncles.
Yes.
Dhulipala Arka Swamayadi. He is a very renowned scholar.
Okay.
Plus physics teacher also. He was a principal in a government degree college, and then he learned Sanskrit and moved to Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya in Tirupati.
Okay.
As a professor.
Good, I'll look into it.
He is a doctorate from Dharwad University.
Okay.
Of course, he is no more.
No, it doesn't matter. His writing is there.
He is a very renowned Sanskrit scholar plus physicist in the sense he is a teacher of physics.
I'll look into it, and I will get a copy.
He has a lot of publications. Some are published by TTD, Tirupati Devasthanam, and some are published by Sanskrit University, Tirupati.
Yes.
Like that. When you search Google books, half a dozen books are listed there.
Yes.
But unfortunately, most of the volumes are not available.
Yeah, that's it.
So they may be in some libraries. One has to scout and
okay, I'll
work for it.
Unfortunately, I'm only one man army here. I don't have much support.
Yeah. That is why I thought I should contribute something.
And my collaborator also left me. So unfortunately, I'm just all by myself now. But you see, I keep working. I don't stop. Time is less, and there are many things to look into, and I have originals of many things, including Vedas and Upanishads. So I always cross-check with what is available, and many times you find that there are discrepancies, and problems in translations and so on. But fortunately, I am in a position to sort of do it. Okay.
Narayananji? Yeah.
Good evening.
A couple of questions. Yeah.
Yes, please.
There is no question. It's only a comment.
Yes,
and,
please.
I am seeing Dr. Sharma after many years.
Yes, Narayan. Thank you so much.
We were colleagues in PRL. So I just want to compliment him for taking up a very new thing. After retirement, people are doing so many things, and he has taken up. As many people have said, I also lack a lot of, even the basic knowledge of Sanskrit.
Yes.
So after retirement, we try to go into many religious aspects,
yes.
and we don't know the meaning at all. So
yes.
I really compliment Dr. Sharma in going into the very details of these things and trying to find it. Of course, I am a skeptic as far as that we have done everything, because this is the normal type of hype that people try to create, saying that we India knew everything.
No, that's not correct.
No. What I'm saying is, that is the type of thing. So you, because of this, there is an opposite view that is getting generated, saying that no, this is all junk. So that type of feeling is there. So it has to be substantiated. What you have done is a very good thing, that you have tried to substantiate it with a lot of arguments and with these type of lectures.
Yes.
And I think this will go a long way in trying to promote what we know. Even at least we Indians know that what we have done earlier with substantial by substantiating with facts and
yes, that's true. No, you are absolutely right. To say that Vedas have everything and we have done everything is incorrect. But we have done many things which are authentic and based on intuition, and based on, intuition plays a lot of role in science. As you know, many of the things have gone intuitively. And, our rishis, I don't know what kind of an intuition they had, that, they conceptualized things, and, they turned out to be experimentally verifiable later, So that is a fortunate part. But there are many things which are still unexplained in Vedas. If you look at the Vedas, there are many things which you don't really understand what they mean. To understand Vedas is a very difficult thing, very difficult thing. So you don't know what they really intend to say. So, that is the problem. So mostly this is a kind of, but to say that they are neither junk nor they contain everything, So you have to take what they are, good at. So many things are good. So we have to take the good things and, reject whatever. So this criticism has to be objective, It is not just we have done everything. That is not true.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Narayan. See you after a long time.
Shubham Pal.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaste.
Yes. I'm Shubham Pal, a student of IIIT Kalyani.
Okay.
And I'm very much interested in Ayurveda. And it started from learning about Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And I also keep some interest in learning about ancient Indian intricacies.
Yes.
In fact, I was suffering from many chronic ailments where these allopathy medicines failed.
Yes.
And it gave me severe side effects.
Yes.
Later on, when I referred to some Ayurvedic doctors, they helped me to cure those things.
Yes.
And now my question is that I got to know about this thing that Ayurveda, it is very good for curing the chronic ailments, but it is not in the mainstream right now. Now, what can we do to bring this kind of system in the mainstream? Because some leftist media, they do what kind of things?
You see, Ayurveda has both plus and minus points. Yes. The minus point of Ayurveda is that, for example, with things which are like COVID, Corona, the Ayurveda is not much of help. You can build immunity. You can take Giloy or whatever, Tulsi or whatever, but it doesn't have an immediate effect, because Ayurveda changes the basic constitution of the body, the balancing of Kapha, Vata and Pitta. So it's a little long time, it takes a long time to change the tendency of the body. So Ayurveda is not good for the modern diseases of viral origin, bacterial origin, but to remain healthy, Ayurveda is very good. So that you don't get these things. If your body becomes strong, immune, so Ayurveda is good for building immunity and not for treating things which are of modern origin, bacterial, viral, and all those things. So Ayurveda should be practiced with a lot of understanding that it is to make you healthy, and not really treat many of these things. So for emergency, you always have to go to, I know many of the eminent Ayurvedic doctors, they go to allopaths for treating their problems, because you can't treat them by Ayurveda in a few days, and life has to go on. You can't wait for years to build your immunity. So Ayurveda is good in certain things, but for modern diseases, no, allopathy or homeopathy sometimes is effective. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir, thank you so much, sir. You spent more than like 1 hour, and for accepting my invitation and and delivering this wonderful talk. Thank you so much once again, sir.
Thank you, Uma, and thank you all for spending
Sir.
so much time.
Yeah,
Look
I
forward to-
thank all the audience also for making this session such a great success. Thank you so much. all of
We'll
you.
meet again sometime. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Sir, yes, sir.
Bye.
Bye.